You know, in pretty much every server room out there, there's this hidden liability that's just growing. It's a silent threat that builds up day by day, right up until the moment it triggers a catastrophe. In this explainer, we're going to uncover this threat and, more importantly, show you how to tame it before it's way too late.
So what are we talking about here? We call it the liability tail. And the idea is actually pretty simple, but it's powerful. The biggest threats to your IT operations are the ones you can't see, or even worse, the ones you might be choosing to ignore.
Just look at this image. Think of this liability tail like a dragon, right? It's just coiled up, latent, waiting. It's a force that grows more powerful every single day, fed by all these little unaddressed issues that just keep piling up. And eventually, it will strike.
Okay, so let's get a formal definition on the table. The liability tail is all of that hidden technical and financial debt that accumulates every single day an aging system stays in production. It's really that slow creep of risk, the kind that turns a little manageable issue into a complete catastrophic failure.
All right, so how does this liability actually build up in the real world? Let's get practical. We're going to start at the very foundation of your whole IT stack. And we're going to do that by busting 4 super common and, frankly, very dangerous myths about power.
Okay, first one up, the myth of the green light. We've all done it. You walk into your server room, you see that steady green light on your uninterruptible power supply, and you think, great, everything's fine. But is it really?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. In fact, that little green light might be one of the most misleading things in your entire data center. What's really happening inside is something we call the chemistry cliff. See, over time, the internal resistance in the battery just builds up, silently. And the moment that UPS is actually needed, the second it's put under a real load, it just fails, instantly. And here's the thing. Here's the hard number that almost everyone forgets. A standard lead-acid battery has a chemical expiration date. After 3 to 5 years, failure isn't just a possibility, it's pretty much a probability. So you see, time is the real enemy here, not that little green light.
All right, on to myth number 2. So your UPS fails, but hey, that's what the backup generator is for, right? It'll just fire up, take over, no problem. Simple as that.
Well, you've probably guessed it, wrong again. A generator is a mechanical engine, and when it starts up, there's this massive frequency fluctuation, a thump, that today's sensitive power supplies just can't handle. It can literally crash your servers before the generator's power even stabilizes. So get this, your backup, the thing that's supposed to save you, can actually become the very thing that causes the failure.
And that naturally brings us to myth number 3, this false sense of security we get from redundancy. You're thinking, I've got 2 power supplies, an A side and a B side. I'm covered. It's that classic N+1 setup. Sounds good on paper, but are you really safe?
Well, not really. Not if your B side is just running on raw, unconditioned power straight from the utility. If that secondary path isn't protected by its own UPS, or at least a power conditioner, it's just as vulnerable to all that utility noise, and especially to those generator thumps we were just talking about. Real, true redundancy means you have 2 clean, fully conditioned power paths, period.
And that brings us to our final power myth, and this one's all about sizing. You've done the math, you've calculated your average power draw, and your circuits are built to handle it. You should be golden, right?
But here's the catch. Modern workloads are anything but average. They don't pull power in a nice, neat line. High-density servers, especially the ones packed with GPUs for AI or flash storage, create these huge in-rush current spikes when they spin up. And bam, those spikes can easily trip breakers that were only sized for the average load, causing an outage you absolutely never saw coming.
Okay, so we've just spent a bunch of time on the risks inside your own walls. Now let's talk about what's happening outside, because your liability tail is also being yanked on by these massive external forces. We're talking about the AI squeeze and how the global hardware market is basically pouring gasoline on this fire.
What we're seeing is a perfect storm, really, of 3 major market drivers. First, you've got the memory pivot. Factories are all retooling for AI chips, so the price of standard RAM and storage is just skyrocketing. Second, the demand collision. This huge wave of Windows 10 upgrades is hitting at the exact same time supply is getting tight. And finally, you've got basic manufacturing hikes from global shortages of stuff like silica and copper, which drives up the cost of everything.
And this table here, it lays out exactly what this all means for your business in black and white.
We're talking prices jumping 20, even 30%. Lead times for critical hardware are stretching out to months, not weeks, and your power to negotiate with vendors, it's just evaporating. Every single one of these things is adding more length and a lot more weight to your liability tail.
I want you to just look at this number for a second. 4 to 6 months. Let it really sink in. That's the new reality for getting critical replacement parts. Now ask yourself this. If your main storage array fails tomorrow, could your business actually survive waiting half a year for a replacement? I mean, really think about that. For most companies, the answer is a hard no.
Okay, I know this sounds a bit bleak. We've laid out all these threats, both inside your data center and out in the wider market. But it's not hopeless. So the big question is, how do you go from that vague feeling of dread to a solid, actionable plan?
Well, it all starts with a really basic principle. You just can't manage what you don't measure. The very first step, before you do anything else, is to stop guessing and start quantifying. A simple audit is all it takes to get a clear picture of your specific liability tail.
And look, you can break this whole audit down into 3 simple pillars. It's not as complicated as it sounds. First, power and continuity. That's everything we just talked about with UPS health and redundancy. Second, the market squeeze. How exposed are you, really, to those long lead times? And third, option security. Are you running any hardware that's past its end of life, EOL, which leaves you wide open to all sorts of vulnerabilities?
So once you go through that checklist, you can pretty easily generate a risk score for yourself. If you've got 2 or fewer risks, you're in the optimized zone. You're in great shape. Your infrastructure is actually a strategic asset. 3 to 5 risks? That puts you in the warning zone. And 6 or more? Well, now you're in the critical zone. And that means your infrastructure isn't just a risk, it's a massive financial and legal liability waiting to happen.
And that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle here. And honestly, it's the most important part. This isn't just about dodging disaster. It's about a fundamental shift in how you think. It's about how you turn that infrastructure from what feels like a ticking time bomb into a real strategic asset that helps move the business forward.
And let's be clear, this isn't just about tech. This has real financial implications. For one, proving you've done your due diligence, that you've taken reasonable care, is huge when it comes to insurance claims. Proper power management also maximizes the life of your hardware. And maybe most important of all, it makes sure your big, expensive disaster recovery plan doesn't get totally torpedoed by a cheap 5-year-old battery. It's all about maintaining trust with your stakeholders.
So, at the end of the day, it really all boils down to this one question. Your infrastructure is one of the most critical assets your organization has. The choice is really yours. Are you going to proactively manage it? Or are you going to let its hidden liability manage you?